But I remember the MC of the event sort of called out my Nona, and it was so cool because I was pouring someone a coffee, and everybody looked towards the kitchen, the swinging doors, and she kind of had popped her head out. She had a tea towel across her shoulder because she was hot, and everybody stood up. The whole place. There was probably 300 people in there. And everybody was they were so happy. They were clapping really loud and cheering and, raising their drinks. And I remember being like, yeah, that's my Nona. She made all this food. When I was 5 years old, I was helping my grandfather peel potatoes. I learned how to peel potatoes at that age because my grandparents had a catering business, and my grandfather used to grow all the vegetables and fruit that they used. And he had just brought in a bucket full of potatoes that needed to be peeled, and once we did that, we would put them in another bucket full of water to just, soak the starch. And I remember I was doing this with him. It was in the basement. It was a hot day, and I was 5. It was getting to be around lunchtime, and I was hungry. And I remember complaining about this as I was, peeling potatoes and doing my best to hold a potato. When you have 5-year-old little hands, potato is like a football, at least it was to me. So I was doing my best to not peel my hand and just peel the potatoes. And I remember, the grumbling in my stomach was really distracting me, and I was frustrated by that, and I started to complain and say, I'm really hungry, I'm starving, I'm dying, the things that we say, right? He was fed up with that. He didn't want to hear that anymore. The flesh of the potato was white when you peel it, and so he peeled this potato, and it was in his hand, and it was this white object. And I know it was a potato, but I remember that was when he said, and he was holding it, and he said, "You don't know what you're talking about." Bearing in mind, I'm a 5-year-old kid, right? And I was like, yes, I do. I'm really hungry. I know how it is to be hungry, And, he said, I have been so hungry. And he would, he said this with, kind of a more firm voice and the wrinkled forehead and everything. I was so hungry that I've had to eat soap. Have you ever had to eat soap? I don't think so. And he's holding this potato, and it looked like a bar of soap. It really did. And he, chucked it into the bucket of water. And, at the time I was like, well, I'm still hungry and I just want lunch and, And I asked him, what did the soap taste like? And he said, it tasted like fire. It just burned and burned and burned and burned and wouldn't stop burning. Even while it was in there, it was a burning. And he said, don't do that. I did it the one time and that was it. But after that, I had to find blades of grass and things like that. When I'm doing that kind of thing with my own work, working in foods now as I do, I don't peel very many potatoes anymore, but I certainly do peel carrots and apples and things like that for pies and cakes and stuff like that. And every time I do, I kind of remember that brief sort of moment in time there and go, you know, to this day I've never had to eat soap. But we live in a different world now where people are hungrier, people are struggling more. When that story took place, it was the 1980s. Uh, it was a different time, just so different. And I don't know, I guess I'm mostly sharing this because I recognize now that that's probably how come I ended up doing this work at all. Because it wasn't a career path that I deliberately chose at all. It did not occur to me to go to culinary school at all. And I just thought that was a weird aspect to my background, that my grandparents did like a farm to table family style catering service out of where they made most of the food in the basement of their house and then out at the venue where they used to work all the time. There was this great big hall where we used to go. And I just remember thinking, yeah, it was just a weird thing in our family history. But now that I've had the experience of seeing the things that I have made make people happy, I feel like I understand sort of why they did that and why it was important to them that at 5 years old I learned how to peel carrots and peel potatoes. I always feel like that's my sort of reason for doing this kind of work and why it has made the most sense. Work experience is very interesting indeed, because in my case, I kind of did all kinds of other stuff and then went sort of backwards into foods, if you want, because I, you know, did it as a kid and then lots of other things. And then when I was just about to turn 40, I got hired at the bakery downstairs and ended up getting you know, a good job there. The owner, previous owner of the bakery, she doesn't own it anymore, said, you know, you're naturally very good at this. But you didn't go to culinary school. And I said, no, I did not. No. Just like, but you can do this. You can like wrap spanakopita like that, and you can make cakes, and this is great. And I was like, well, I don't know, you know. I saw other people doing it. You know, I kind of learned by osmosis, if you want. When you're a young kid and you've got a grandmother who's always cooking and a grandfather who's always cooking, and they have a staff that are around that are always cooking, I kind of observed what they were all doing and just filed it away, I suppose. It's of interest to know why we do what we do, like for a living, like what occupation we have and why it might not be satisfying us and why we thought it might at the start, perhaps. In my case, I just didn't understand why I couldn't enjoy working before. Before I ever worked in any kitchen anywhere, I hated working. Not because I hated working, but because other people around were just like super stressful to me. And it's funny because as soon as I was in a kitchen, even though there are hot things and sharp things everywhere, I still felt safer there than at a salon or in a storefront. I worked in lots of storefronts. And it's like this cellular memory that kind of showed up when I got hired at the kitchen downstairs, and I was only brought on because I wanted a little bit of extra spending money. I was still married at the time, and lo and behold, that job helped me gain strength in my body. When I was first hired, I could only work about 4 hours a week because the strain of standing was still strong in this one. I was a lot heavier, so I had to build up strength and stamina. So, over time though, I did, and I could, more viably or realistically kind of support myself. And then I started to realize, my life around me at home makes less and less sense ever since I started making sense of my work life. Very interesting. And, a few years after that, I ended up living here on my own. And that's all because of that job. Sort of helping me figure out what I'm good at and what I'm actually capable of, and how I'm actually tougher than I used to really feel like I was. But even though a kitchen is a pressurizing environment, I didn't feel that way. I felt like, no. If ever there was, a difficult moment in that environment, for some reason, it was easier for me to look at it for what it was and be like, okay, that's a you problem. You're just, clearly this is you and not me, because everything was fine until a moment ago when you decided it wasn't fine. So, I think it's because I got older, and also things became more obvious when I was doing something that I have a natural aptitude to do. It helps, I guess, helps you see things more clearly. So I think it's important. I guess it's as important as it is to me now, because I have a child who's, 16 years old now, and I don't think he's really thinking all that much about career paths or ideas about further education, or if he has ideas, he doesn't share them with me. But I guess I'm just kind of sorting these thoughts out here so that I can maybe have something of value and substance to offer should he ever ask me for any kind of advice. What do you do, and how did you choose or stumble into, as I did, your occupation? And do you enjoy your occupation still? Have you done it for a long time, so you're still liking it? Or you've done it for a long time and you're like, okay, no, I need to be done with this, or I need to retire, or something like that. And if you are retired, is it okay? Or are you bored out of your mind and it's making you nuts? Because that's what happened to my grandparents. That's why they had this business at all. I guess that's why now today I look at the cost of food and where it comes from and things like that and go, yeah, it's harder now than it used to be. And it was really magical and fun to be a kid and have the experience of the Willy Wonka, that room in that movie, the original Willy Wonka with Gene Wilder in it, not the new ones, the old one. There's that room in the movie where they're all everything is edible. It's that room where they get on the boat, that terrifying boat ride. You know the one. Yeah, yeah. You know the one. That was what it was like with my grandparents. They grew everything. We didn't have to buy anything, any produce. The only things they brought in for all of the cooking they were doing, they had to bring in dairy and breads and meats from other locals who, that's what they did. But otherwise, they had everything. They had cherries and apricots and pears and peaches and apples and strawberries and raspberries and, of course, all the vegetables, all the different beans and peas and aromatics, all the aromatics, different lettuces, radicchio and arugula, and there's iceberg lettuce. God, that was a very, very, very fruitful garden. We probably fed the entire city more than once over all the years. And it's a nice feeling inside. It still feels nice. I have to say the nicest moment and sort of the probably reason that it feels good to, even though it's a pressurized sort of environment where you are under the gun, you got to be looking at the time and being really as efficient as you can. In spite of all of that, it's okay, because I remember seeing, I was helping my grandmother do a wedding, and with family style dining, it was not, so it's not like a buffet, right, where you go and you fill your own plate. But we weren't doing like traditional table service either, where we were bringing every individual a portioned plate. Instead, we did family style, where everything is on like big platters. So my grandmother would like load these, and I mean that, load platters with like a mountain of spaghetti or whatever the dish was that we were on. And then she would give, me and a couple of other ladies platters to bring out to all these different tables. We used to serve hundreds of people. And at one particular wedding, I remember I was out bussing tables. I was 10, and I had a nice new dress on, because my nonna said, oh, you have to look nice if you go serve the tables. So so I remember I got a new dress to wear, and I was really excited, and I was pouring coffee for people, and they were like, oh, look at you, and it was cute. But I remember the MC of the event sort of called out my nonna, and it was so cool because I was pouring someone a coffee, and everybody looked towards the kitchen, the swinging doors, and she kind of had popped her head out. She had a tea towel across her shoulder because she was hot, and everybody stood up. The whole place. There was probably 300 people in there. And everybody was they were so happy. They were clapping really loud and cheering and, raising their drinks. And I remember being like, yeah, that's my nonna. She made all this food. And I get to eat it all the time because she's my nonna. And aren't I lucky? I sort of made that, I guess, memory, and it's sticking around, I guess. And so that's why I like sharing, the cook with me videos and stuff like that, because that's the way I learned, was just watching other people do what they do and why they do what they do. And I think it's fun to share that kind of knowledge, especially nowadays when things are harder to come by and are expensive and, that kind of thing. It's always good to learn from different people, and that way your own kitchen life might be a little easier. So that was a long food talk, but I don't know, I feel like it's important to consider, why do we do the job that we do? Do we even like that job? Does it give us the, for lack of a better analogy, the nourishment that we want? Or is it just draining or boring or some other adjective that I can't think of? And if it is a negative, might be worth looking at changing an aspect of it, or quitting altogether and changing to something else entirely, although that might be scary and extreme for most of us. It's worth thinking about, because it's so easy when we are busy adulting to just, you go to bed, sleep, wake up in the morning, okay, gotta go to work, and you kind of get ready and you go and you do your work, and and then you come home and you deal with the rest of your life, and it's just lather, rinse, repeat, lather, rinse, repeat. It's just super boring. And we often just get stuck doing that and wondering why our lives suck, for, and that's the reason that we need to examine, I suppose. Anyway, I hope this finds you well. I hope that maybe it's made you think, or want to talk to your own kids or something about career paths and why your choices are the choices that they are, even if you don't know or understand why they are. Or if you do, it's an interesting part of life that we don't really talk about. So I will leave us with that. It's engagement time! Subscribe button. Video you can go ahead and watch. I hope you will. Stick around. I hope you subscribe. I hope you comment. I hope you like the video, and you can even share said video if you like. It helps a lot. I will see you next time.